It's right at 9 o'clock. They're still coming in. Hey, good morning. Josh is going to lead us in a prayer here once we are ready to go. All right, Josh.
Let's pray. Great God Almighty, we thank you for another beautiful day that you've blessed us with. We ask that you be with the teachers as they've labored this week to prepare portions of your word for the classes. We ask that we know that their labor will not be in vain, but we ask that you help us to be attentive, and we thank you for all the teachers and the efforts that they have put in. We ask that you help this word, help us to apply it to our lives, help us to better understand you. For these things in your son's name.
Amen. It's good to be with you all. Nice group this morning. I hope you're excited and ready to pick up our study. We're going to be on page 10. Also, after this class, there's 3 more classes left. And I believe we have about 5 chapters left for Ecclesiastes. I don't expect to finish the book, which is okay. I think we're moving at just the right pace. It's been so encouraging to me, and I hope it has been for you guys. And then Ryan Awad is kindly going to teach the final class, which I'm excited for. We're going to be out of town visiting family in Arizona. So I just told Ryan somewhere around chapters 11 and 12, and so that'll be good. 13 weeks is great. It doesn't, it's not a perfect fit for each book of the Bible, but it is what we have, and I've been very, very grateful to be a part of this class with you all. So we're on page 10. If you're using your Bible, we are in Ecclesiastes chapter 7. And we're going to be picking up towards the bottom of page 10, which is right around verse 13, 14. It's one of the most fun and practical and exciting parts of Ecclesiastes because despite how heavy and challenging the first 6 chapters were, now he's going to help us have this practical wisdom for how to conduct life under the sun. Verse 1 of chapter 7 was an introductory verse. What do you need most in a time of adversity? Are you looking for the good name, or are you looking for the precious ointment that the earth has to offer, whether that be popular friends, wealth, comforts, just whatever it has. So we're not going to go back over the first 13 verses. But we are going to see how it sets up the next text. I'm going to read verse 13, 14, and then we'll get into this next section here, which will be 15 to 22. Now, the teacher is going to help us. Wisdom's going to help us. It's going to correct mistakes that we can make during difficult times of adversity. Would anybody like to read verses 14 to 22? Go ahead, somebody.
In the day of prosperity be joyful, but in the day of adversity consider, God has made the one as well as the other, so that man cannot discover anything that will come after him. In my futile life I have seen everything. There is a righteous man who perishes in spite of his righteousness, and there is a wicked man who lives long in spite of his evil. Don't be excessively righteous, and don't be overly wise. Why should you destroy yourself? Don't be excessively wicked, and don't be foolish. Why should you die before your time? It is good that you grasp the one and do not let the other slip from your hand, for the one who fears God will end up with both of them. Wisdom makes the wise man stronger than 10 rulers of a city. There is certainly no righteous man on the earth who does good and never sins. Don't pay attention to everything people say, or you may hear your servant cursing you, for you know that many times you yourself have cursed others.
Thank you, Brennan. Okay, I'm going to stop talking really quickly, and then we're going to ask what you all see here. I'm just going to set this up really quickly. As a result of the difficulties and the vanities, the fact that God has made both joy and adversity, and we can't figure out what's going to come of that, people will tend to react in two different extreme ways. In this text that Brennan just read, it's all connected. So let me ask you, first of all, what did you see in the text? Did you have any questions about it? Remember, Koheleth's audience is very possibly living in the time of exile under great difficulty from oppressive rule. They've already asked the question in verse 10, why were the former days better than these? Now he's helping equip them for how to live during these days. So, not in a hurry, so take time to look at it.
Is that why in verse 16 it says, be not overly righteous? That one's kind of, I don't understand that one. Be not overly righteous and do not make yourself too wise. Why would you do that?
I'm glad you don't understand because it's been years for me. Excellent question. There's an interesting dichotomy going on here. Preacher sees people going in two different extreme directions. Think about it this way, because when you read that, I think, well, duh, we're supposed to be righteous and not wicked, so what's the deal? Well, think about it. If you're seeing all this vanity that's happening under the sun and you're going, wow, there is no earthly benefit to serving God. If I'm going to still have to go through the ups and downs, in other words, just being religious isn't going to insulate me from the challenges in life. Now that's going to hit real home for us. So if that's the case, I might just say, forget about serving God. I'm just going to live wickedly. Don't be overly wicked. Why should you die before your time? For some people, this is going to cause them to just throw off all restraint because and so this just causes them to die before their time because of foolishness. Then there's the other end of the extreme. Don't be excessively righteous. Don't be overly wise. It's good that you grasp the one and don't let the other slip. So the other way you could look at this extreme would be, we would say, the Pharisees' approach, who concluded, if you're not getting some kind of earthly benefit from your righteous living, then you're just not doing enough good deeds. You just need to try harder. That creates a false sense of righteousness and also misery. Jesus said on the Sermon on the Mount, unless you exceed the Pharisees' righteousness, in other words, their commands that they've chosen to keep, then you're not going to enter into the kingdom of heaven. And the problem with that extreme pursuit of righteousness is it's not based on from the heart. It's based on external motives, creating this list of commands that they could keep. And if they keep the commands, it's going to grant me passage through the pearly gates. But again, that's going to lead to a miserable life of serving God. I'm going to be constantly filled with guilt and wondering, have I ever done enough? Also, when they come face to face with Jesus in John 6, they can't even recognize him because they've read their Bible for so long, just looking for the commands, and they don't have a clue who God is. So Jesus said, basically, you've never seen his form, you've never heard his voice, which is it's crazy to think. They've some of the most educated people in the world, as far as the biblical standpoint goes. He says, you don't know who I am. because they had been excessively righteous, overly wise. So the solution that he's offering here is to shun both of these approaches. I'm just going to throw it off and live wickedly, or I'm going to establish my own righteousness and instead live with balance in our lives. I just talked for a really long time. Does that make any sense to anybody? Questions or thoughts on that? Very, very easy challenge, natural reactions.
Kind of sounds like when Jesus said, "You guys have forgotten the weightier matters of the law."
Exactly.
Tie men to human and go.
Absolutely. Very good. Wisdom makes a man stronger than 10 rulers of the city, because you're not going to get out of balance like this. But don't forget, there's not a righteous man on the earth who does good and never sins. So a wise man's going to understand that seeking God above all else is going to give him this strength, but yet he's still very sinful. That should naturally cause us to be more forgiving and tolerant of other people, or especially of our brethren who sin against us. What else do you see in the text going 21, 22? If I missed your hand, just speak up, sorry. This is just another Ecclesiastes diamond.
For the don't pay attention to everything people say. The modern day equivalent is don't read the comments.
Thank you. Very good. Yeah. Don't freak out every time somebody says something about me. Hey, most of the time, well, A, I've done it too, and B, and I don't think, yeah. I've done it too, and then secondly, most of the time, we don't necessarily mean it in a mean way. Should we always be saying something behind someone else? No. But hey, don't freak out. I've done it too. Very good. Other thoughts on that or to add to that? Also, maybe there's a bone of truth I should take from what somebody's saying about me. Okay, let's read the rest of chapter 7. We're continuing these mistakes wisdom will correct here. I've tested all this by wisdom, and I resolved, I will be wise, but it was beyond me. Ooh, we keep saying that. What exists is beyond reach and very deep. Who can discover it? I now turn my thoughts to explore and seek wisdom in the explanation of things, and to know that wickedness is stupidity and folly is madness. And I find more bitter than death the woman who is a trap. Her heart is a net and her hands are chains. The one who pleases God will escape her, but the sinner will be captured by her. Look, says the teacher, I've discovered this by adding one thing to another and finding out the explanation which my soul continually searches for but does not find. Among 1,000 people I found one true man, but among all these I have not found a true woman. Only see this, I have discovered that God made people upright, but they have pursued many schemes. Okay, before we ask, what did you see? Again, very briefly. It's interesting to note as the preacher wraps up chapter 7's concluding thoughts, he points out complete wisdom is elusive. If it weren't, then why do we need God? And just when you think he's about to wrap it up, he proceeds to tell his audience one more mistake that wisdom will correct. This one is so dangerous, it's more bitter than death itself. And rarely do you see the preacher call out specific sins in his sermon. But this one sin is going to send you to prison for the rest of your life. Okay. What did you see in this text? Or questions that you have? I know there's going to be questions. What is this sin that's so dangerous? Sorry, did I see a hand?
Well, it says, basically, don't be strengthened or gain wisdom and think that you haven't done anything, or that you haven't sinned. And it is really unfortunate and extremely embarrassing and awkward if I were to make a list of how many times I've done that and documented something mentally, and I didn't pay any attention to it, or I didn't ever, not even once, when I've done it thousands of times probably. And it's so easy to throw yourself on the throne and judge, and not look in the mirror and examine yourself daily.
Okay. He basically says, this one's worse than death. What do we call this sin? I'm sorry. I'm looking in verse 26. I'm seeking a specific answer.
Maybe adulterous woman.
Sexual immorality. It's so dangerous. Did you notice? The bitter than death, the woman who is a trap. Interesting. He doesn't speak about her physical external appearance. He says her heart is a net. Her hands are fetters. In other words, chains. But if you're someone who lives with wisdom, seeks and pursues wisdom and seeks to please God, you will escape this. I just think it's so powerful that of all the things that he could have pointed out here in this paragraph or chapter on mistakes that wisdom will correct, this person, this situation is so bad. Now, typically I get to this part and I think, oh, he's obviously talking about a bad woman, a harlot or something. But that's funny because it wouldn't take a lot of wisdom to say, stay away from a bad girl or stay away from a bad woman. Again, the situation is the heart problem. Her heart dictates what she thinks, therefore what she wears, how she wears it. We might even say she dresses cute. But she uses her sexuality as a means of fulfillment by taking someone else as prey. You see that? This isn't some overt, obvious, oh yeah, watch out. This is a woman whose heart is using, and hey, isn't that what society tells women to do anyways? Yes. Yes, ma'am.
It just makes me think of like modern feminism, or just feminism in general, and also going back to Genesis and the curse of God saying that like man and women will be, I forget the exact terminology, but like basically fighting for control. And this woman that's described is trying to control the whole,
You hit the nail on the head. That's what society is telling women. This is who you are. This is who you're supposed to be. So use your means to take control and take prey over man. Now, got that? Let's read the last part that throws everybody off. We always break it apart as if it's something else. Let's look at it this time in the context of the sin of sexual immorality. By the way, famous examples of people who wrecked their lives in the Bible, sexual immorality. David and Bathsheba. Yes, Reuben. So many examples. Their lives were never, ever the same. And we know from what we've observed, even in our lives today, you see someone committing this sin, there is no coming back. Obviously, there's repentance, but it's just not the same. Okay. Final verses. Again, we can't overemphasize enough. The person who seeks to please God, the person who's got eternity in mind is going to escape this. Please don't miss that. Okay. I discovered this by adding one thing to another to find out the explanation, which my soul continually searches but does not find. Among 1,000 people I found one true man, but among all these I have not found a true woman. Only see this. I've discovered God made people upright, but they have pursued many schemes. Always been a very difficult verse or a text. But again, let's look at it in the context of sexual immorality. Who out there, from a woman's standpoint, doesn't listen to what society says and try to use their means, their body, whatever they can to gain control, to make a prey on? Who doesn't? By the way, the word who in Ecclesiastes is very important. If you go through Ecclesiastes, circle, highlight, underline who, each time he's asking his audience the question, are you going to do this or not? In other words, like the difference that we saw in chapter 3, who knows that the spirit of man goes upward and the spirit of the animal goes down? Who lives like that? Nobody does. Should we? Yes. So it's a challenge. He's challenging. Thoughts or comments on this? Yes, ma'am.
Is he just speaking from a man's point of view? Or, I mean, a lot of times men can dress where it's attractive to a woman also that is inappropriate.
Thank you.
I mean,
Thank you.
it's always the woman's fault?
No, because in the end he says, God made man and woman upright. They've sought many schemes. Hey, it doesn't say too much good on man. I guess you have to hope to be the one and not the 999 men. Yeah. It's especially an issue for women and pushed so much in our society, but men aren't much better. Not by any stretch of the imagination. By the way, if Solomon is writing Ecclesiastes, I just can't help but think, you would know what 1,000 women is like. You married 1,000. The Sidonians, the Hittites, yeah, those aren't godly women. And we don't have to look far in the Bible to see examples of women who didn't live this way, who didn't use this as a way to prey over man. Many, many incredible examples. Abigail, Ruth, Sarah. So, yes, both men and women, very dangerous. Okay, any other thoughts on this? I'm sorry.
That's right. It's just an observation that verse 29 reminds me of something that's kind of a stereotype or a trope of what parents say to their kids when they make a bad decision. I didn't raise you that way. And verse 29, although using different words, what God is saying choices, he's chosen to do these things that I'm describing to you. I think as parents, we could probably relate to what God is trying to tell us there.
Outstanding. We're only one chapter in. Don't you love how practical and powerful this section of Ecclesiastes is? It's just going to keep getting better. Now we're going to enter into the next section. It's going to run from chapter 8, verse 1, all the way to chapter 9, verse 10. Okay, we're going to continue on how to live wisely in days of adversity. Now, we could kind of umbrella this section under this idea. And I think you'll all really appreciate this, because who doesn't think about this? When good things happen to bad people, what do? How do you live through that? And vice versa, when bad things happen to good people. Wisdom's going to, here we go. He's going to show us how to walk through this. We're going to take 5 minutes. Please read through, mark the text, write your questions. Chapter 8, verse 1 to chapter 9, verse 10. There's a lot here. Extremely encouraging. We're looking at chapter 8, verse 1 to chapter 9, verse 10. Where's my questions? I'll give you a little quick outline here. Verse 1, introduction, theme verse for the whole section. Then he's going to look at how to handle the abuses of human government, 2 through 9. 10 through 13, how to handle when sinners are praised for their righteousness. 8:14 to 9:6, how to not lose your faith when God is seemingly absent. And then finally, verse 9:7 through 9:10, the course of wisdom that will make your face shine. It's just a little layout there. Give you guys 3 or 4 more minutes. Got another minute or two. All right. Just for the sake of time, I want to open it up here while you're finishing looking through things. Please raise your hand if you saw something really stuck out to you, very, very powerful. That's pretty thematic of this whole section. Very good. Before I say anything, thank you. I was hoping there might be a few others.
There's one faith for everyone, regardless of where you go.
We cannot, you and I cannot, we're going to get to, she's referring to verse chapter 9, verse 2. Not the best chapter division. You can almost just scribble out chapter 9. There's one fate for everyone. Everything is the same. But especially chapter 9, verse 1. I took this all to heart. The righteous, the wise, their works are in God's hands. People don't know whether to expect love or hate. That is one of the most challenging and profound thoughts in this section and in the entire book of Ecclesiastes. You and I cannot determine God's love or his hatred towards us. In other words, is God hating me or loving me right now? Based on the circumstances. And if that doesn't fly in the face of everything you've ever heard, I don't know. It just does to me. Very good. Other things that stood out. Yes, sir.
So, verse 14 of chapter 8. There is a futility that is done on earth, that is, there are righteous men to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked. On the other hand, there are evil men to whom it happens according to the deeds of the righteous. I say that this too is futility. So that's pretty profound, and yet, and here we're reading, the words of the preacher and his wisdom. It's nice to know, I think, that he saw this all. We see this sometimes, and we think when something bad happens to us, why me? Because we all think of ourselves as the righteous person. Maybe we shouldn't think of ourselves like that. But certainly we've pondered this before, and you hear the wise preacher is pondering this, and it's nice to know that he saw it too. And one of the things that we can conclude is there's not this one-to-one correlation that, as long as I'm being obedient to God, nothing bad is going to happen to me on earth. If we think like that, our faith is going to be challenged, and if we're not careful, we'll lose our faith because we think, nothing bad is supposed to happen to me. I'm being obedient to God. And it's not like that. And the preacher here tells us it's not like that.
Thank you. I was going to just say that our faith is going to fail. But yes, very, very, same thing. Very, very dangerous. By the way, the Bible is full of examples where injustice takes place. And Koheleth specifically think about his audience and what they're living through during the exile, during the difficult, dark days, which is, we can relate somewhat, even though we're doing pretty good right now today. But that is so impactful for them and also for us. By the way, when we talk about the wisdom literature in the Bible, which books are we referring to? Does anybody know?
Ecclesiastes, Proverbs. Yeah, I tend to
Yes. There's one you missed.
At least Ecclesiastes and Proverbs.
Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs. Did you know the wisdom books of the Bible make up, just a wild guess, anybody, how much of the Bible does it make up by percent? 17% of the Bible. Basically, 1/5 of our entire Bible is made up in the wisdom literature. That's staggering. The primary purpose of these books that God gives us is to equip us so that we can handle adversity thrown at us. But something to never forget, especially like Proverbs says in the end of chapter 1, you and I cannot buy insurance after it's already flooded. They won't sell you the policy. And you cannot obtain wisdom after the trials rocked your life. The time to do it must be now. The lesson I have had to learn a terrible way in my own life. This is why Koheleth wants them to be able to do this. This is why, as Mr. Mackey mentioned, many Christians buckle and fail in adversity. Now, here's the real drop your jaw. Chapter 8, verse 1 sets us up for this entire section. We're going to run out of time. Wherever we stop, we'll finish it next week, Lord willing. A wise man is going to go through these times, and they're not going to, it doesn't matter how unfair the circumstances are in his life. Wisdom, well, let's just read it. Who is like the wise person? There's the question again, who? That's the challenge. Who is like the wise person and knows an interpretation of a matter? A man's wisdom, I'll read the ESV, makes his face shine, and the hardness of his face is changed. We'll just ask a theoretical question, don't answer, but what does your face look like? What kind of face do you bring home, to work, here? Now, personally, I suffer from a rare disorder of sad face syndrome. So that's, if you have that, you're off the hook. What an interesting statement. How you go through life is going to, whether you are going through life seeking wisdom, is going to make its effect. Here's a quote I read from a young preacher. He says, "An older Christian once told me, 'Do you ever wonder why some older Christians are always so grumpy? It's because they violated the principle taught in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 1. Quote, remember your Creator in your youth before the dark days come.' When these people, older Christians who are grumpy, when they were young, they couldn't wait to get a job, couldn't wait to have success, but then when they got that, it didn't turn out like they had hoped. So then they longed for retirement, but once that came, their bodies were all broken down, so that all that was left was a bitter disposition and outlook on life. Whew. Everything they kept looking forward to was always letting them down, so they became permanently disgruntled with life." That is not how the Lord has called us to be able to go through life. But without the wisdom contained, Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, we are not going to be able to go through life and have our face shine. People handle adversity differently, but this is going to set us up here for the way to handle it. Let's take a look at the first section. Chapter 8, verses 2 through 9. Now, instead of looking at verse 2 from the beginning like we would usually do, I want you to start at the end and work backwards. Can someone tell me what is going on in verse 9?
I was thinking it was because of the time, like someone is suppressing them.
There's some form of suppression. Anybody else? Yeah. Verse 2, where's the suppression? Putting verse 9 and verse 2 together, where's the suppression likely coming from? Government, the king. Okay. Walk me through Koheleth's wisdom for how we handle such a time. And by the way, this doesn't just have to come from government that's pictured here, but we could think of this in other ways. You could have a boss pressuring you unjustly. You could have a spouse not treating the marriage like God designed it. Each case, this is going to be the things that we need to remember. You may come up with more or less. I came up with 4 points, whatever. So walk through this with me. What's the first thing that he says to do? And how do we do it? Yes, sir.
I think you're talking about verse 3, don't be in a hurry to leave him, but it says don't join him in an evil manner. Right? It's like, you made the point earlier, Mike, and I think it's a very good point, that this is practical. This is practical
So practical.
today to us in 2024, right? I mean, it doesn't get much more practical than this. You've got a king, you've got a president, maybe you don't agree with everything that he does, but don't be in a hurry to leave him, but don't join him in doing something evil. And we need to keep that in mind. Not in a hurry to leave him, but don't join in evil.
Outstanding. Hey, what's the first thing you do when you're under pressure? I got to run. I'm out of here. Don't do that. Steady. Don't be in a hurry to escape. Don't try to force the trial to be over. God is going to take care of it in His time. What do you see next? Well, Mr. Mackey alluded to it very well. Do not persist in a bad cause. Why does he say it that way? You find yourself in the situation of oppression. He says, don't persist in a bad cause. It's almost like you were doing it already. Maybe part of the oppression is a result of your actions or my actions. Stop. Stop doing those bad actions. Maybe problems in the church or in my marriage are revealing some sin that I'm conducting. It's time to stop. It's time. Then what? What is the next encouragement, instruction that he gives? Verse 4 and 5 and 6 and 7.
I think it begins at the end of verse 3, basically telling us he's going to do what he wants to do. And again, that's very practical for us. We're not going to be able to, we'd like to change the behavior of some of our leaders, but they're going to do what they want to do. And verse 4, since he's got the authority, who's going to tell him not, me telling him not to do it is not going to change.
Thank you.
Do what he wants to do.
Do not say, "What are you doing?" By the way, someone very famous in the Bible went to God and literally said, "What are you doing?" Anybody remember who? God, this isn't right. Let's talk. You got this messed up. I shouldn't be suffering like this. I haven't done anything wrong. Yeah. Okay, excellent thoughts. We'll pick this up right where we left off.